IoT Unplugged, where we talk to industry leaders, innovators, and major players in the Internet of Things, bringing you the best and latest insights. Tune in to learn more.
In this episode, I speak to Sameer Sharma, General Manager of IoT Business at MediaTek, as we discuss the fragmented nature of the IoT market, how MediaTek prioritizes its investments and development, and the integration of AI. Hi, Sameer. Thank you so much for joining me on the IoT Unplugged podcast.
Caitlin, thank you for having me on this podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Great. And could you start us off by providing a brief introduction to who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. My current role at MediaTek is AVP for the IoT business unit and the GM for our business in US and Europe. In terms of my background, 25 years in the technology industry. My academic background was hardware software co-design. So we were at that time using AI to figure out how to make circuits more testable. Started at Intel as a design engineer, became a Xeon product manager, managed embedded businesses for a while, and was involved in some key acquisitions, including bringing Android on x86. And from there, went on to run a large part of the IoT business at Intel and grew that into a healthy number. At MediaTek, I'm very excited to work with a world-class team to elevate and grow our business into the next big growth business for MediaTek.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. Could you also introduce MediaTek?
Yeah, MediaTek has been in many ways, either a very well-known entity or not a very well-known entity, depending on who you talk to. So we are one of the top 5 fabless semiconductor companies in the world. We round out the top 5 with companies like NVIDIA, Qualcomm, Broadcom, AMD. And, if you look at our employee strength, about 21,000 employees, our revenue last year was roughly $16.5 billion, which was a healthy 20% plus growth from the prior year. We take a lot of the, profits we make and put it right back into R&D. So last year's R&D spending was more than $4 billion. And all this work and all these investments over time have resulted in MediaTek being the number 1 player in multiple markets. So by volume, we are number 1 in smartphones worldwide, number 1 in smart TV, number 1 in broadband and networking, especially for customer premises and small medium businesses, home and so on and so forth. Number 1 in voice assistants, number 1 in ARM Chromebooks, number 1 in Android shipped SoCs globally. In addition to that, we have 3 key growth areas that we are focused on right now. Data center with a big focus on accelerators and ASICs, automotive, where we have a deep partnership with NVIDIA, and of course, IoT, which is what I lead for MediaTek for US and Europe.
So why don't we start with talking a little bit about your IoT business unit? Could you walk us through the unit and also talk a little bit about how it fits within the wider MediaTek portfolio?
Absolutely, Caitlin. So let me start with a big picture view because, IoT is a term that can be defined in many different ways. So when you look at some of the analysts, when you look at some of our competitors, some of them will take a very broad view of IoT. So if I zoom in and from a revenue perspective, MediaTek's revenue last year was roughly 37 to 40% from what we call smart edge platforms. So this is everything from smart TV to smart home to voice assistants to the specific business unit that I am in charge of, which is the IoT business. And our team's focus is primarily to go after the broad market because we feel like there's hundreds of customers out there who can play a key role in transforming all these different IoT verticals like retail, like transportation, healthcare, smart cities, industrial, and so on and so forth. But they need help. They need a lot of tools. They need open SDKs. They need a thriving ecosystem around any platform, any technology platform they build upon, right? And that's my team's role to enable this broad, fragmented market by creating an ecosystem to go help them get to the next level of digital disruption, both for themselves and for their end customers. Just to give you a bit of a sizing, so Smart Edge platform as a group last year was just over $6 billion in revenue. Now, IoT is obviously a smaller part of it and rapidly growing because, as I said, we are focused on the broad market. It's very fragmented by nature, right? So that's part we are focused on.
Why don't we talk about this fragmented nature of IoT? It's something people have certainly spoken about, both from the perspective of there being opportunities and challenges involved. How do you at MediaTek prioritize your investments and where you decide to develop?
So, Caitlin, it's very clear that the way to success in the IoT market is to have a thriving ecosystem. I call it a win 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 strategy, which means everybody in the ecosystem has to have some financial benefit, obviously, being able to generate profits. But working together, you create an outcome that's much better than the sum of all the parts, right? And so that mindset is what has helped us prioritize and go after certain verticals. So let me give you a few examples. MediaTek, because it tends to be a very high leverage market, because IoT tends to be a very high leverage market, we always look at what are MediaTek's inherent strengths. So when I look at our smartphone SoC strength, the DNA is power efficient computing. We're also investing heavily in AI at the edge in that part of the market. Then I move to the smart TVs and tablets, and we are the number one driver for display technology in the world. So that's a technology I can leverage. When I look at what we're doing in automotive, ruggedization, extended temperature, things like ASIL-D are things that are available to me. So what my team tends to do is to look at what we call a leverage, derive, create strategy. We leverage all these capabilities and products that are already available that frankly, given the size of my business, I cannot afford. But because I'm part of MediaTek with $4 billion in R&D spending, I'm able to leverage. So that's the first step. Derive is more around there are some unique needs for products that our customers have. For example, they want extended temperature support for some of the ruggedized industries like Industrial 4.0 or smart cities, outdoor stuff as an example. They may need Linux support in addition to Android, which has been a classical strength. They may need some specific IOs, some specific packaging. So that's where we do a little bit of derivative work. And then when we feel like there is a need for a dedicated SoC, we would go and do a dedicated SoC for the IoT market. But so far, we've had very good success, leveraging all these strengths and leveraging the existing products, but then building up on it in terms of long life, extended temp, more OS support, as an example. What does that mean in terms of the markets we've entered and where we've been successful? The first two markets where we found a lot of success was in retail because a lot of devices tend to be Android heavy and fitness equipment. So you think about all the major fitness equipment providers globally, and we have them as our customer, right? So we found instant uptake and a pull from these markets. Now, increasingly, we are finding success in digital signage, for example, at restaurants or at airports, because again, it's about driving a display, right? And then you add in AI to it, that makes the value proposition even more attractive. Next, we are looking at transportation because there's a big aftermarket. So, non automotive transportation, think about fleet and telematics and so on. We are also looking at smart cities. We have had some initial good success and design wins in Industrial 4.0, manufacturing automation, defect detection applications like that. Because we have that strong edge processing capability, whether it's on the CPU, the GPU, or our neural processing unit, the NPU, which, by the way, is already on its eighth generation of iteration and improvement. So when we look at all of these things, we'll do a very careful analysis on, what can we tap into? What is the best use of that incremental investment we are making? And where do we bring value to our customers where they say this is a no-brainer for us to go with MediaTek?
Great, and some really interesting points raised there, particularly with regards to being in tune with customer needs, but also not necessarily seeking to create a new application where the demand isn't there. So I think that certainly helps address the fragmentation side. You very briefly mentioned it, Sameer, and we would be remiss not to talk about it on this podcast, which is, of course, AI. And not only the growing adoption of it in all different industry verticals, but sort of the ubiquity of it. What role do you see AI playing in your IoT roadmap?
I think for us, AI is not a feature. I think it's something that's built in into every stage of product development and scaling, right? So when we start designing our SoCs within MediaTek, there is extensive use of AI-based tools. Internally, we have deployed enterprise-grade versions of large language models, which our engineers are using extensively to become more efficient. Once the product comes out, we make sure that from an architecture perspective, we are putting in enough AI capability, not just in terms of raw tops, because tops tends to be the default. Oh, I have 10 tops, I have 15 tops, and so on and so forth. You have to have a very balanced view of the SoC architecture. So let me give you an example. We recently launched Genio, which is our brand for IoT devices, right? We launched Genio 720 and 520. And these two products are pin compatible. So you make one design and you can have two levels of performance on the same product, which our customers love. But more importantly, it has our eighth generation neural processing unit. But we didn't stop there. We said we need to look holistically at how customers will use AI. A big part of how you use AI efficiently is access to data. And if you look at some of the generative AI distilled models, even when they're distilled down, they're still pretty massive, somewhere between 7 to $12 billion parameters. So we made sure that we had enough memory. We equipped the platform with up to 16 gigabytes of memory. Then we chose the memory to be low power DDR5. So you have that nice balance of performance and power. Because if you're not able to get the data to the NPU and back in time and to the CPU, then all this raw horsepower doesn't mean anything. And Caitlin, the net result of that is we were demonstrating all the major distilled LLMs at Embedded World recently. So think about obviously, Gemma, which is the Gemini scaled down from Google, Tiny Llama, which is the scaled down version of Llama from Meta. We had Phi Mini. Phi Mini 4.0 just came out 2 weeks ago. We already had it up and running on our platform. Then we obviously had DeepSeek, which has been getting a lot of coverage in the media, available on our platform as well. So you see that we are basically creating a platform that I would call generative AI ready. In other words, we provide the tools, we do the pre-due diligence. So our customers, whatever they pick and choose as the GI capability, they're able to implement it pretty quickly, right? So that's sort of the mindset of how AI is playing a very significant role in our roadmap. We've got something called NeuroPilot SDK, which is our software development kit that gives you access to low-level hardware primitives to get the maximum performance and to be able to tune that AI use case to your need if you're a customer.
Great. And why don't we talk a little bit about generative AI with regards to some real world applications you've seen and how it's been deployed?
I think any answer or any response about generative AI has to start with the disclaimer about how early we are in this journey. A lot of our customers are still trying to figure out how to use it. But in these conversations, there are a few use cases that are bubbling up. Clearly, the top one is around the human machine interface going from touch to more spoken interface with the ability to run large language models at the edge. And you do that for obviously for economics reason. You don't want to be paying for a lot of tokens going to the cloud. That'll obviously always be available, but if you can, why not do it at the edge? Many industries are heavily regulated. They have privacy concerns, so don't want to send the data too much outside the enterprise, right? And then, of course, there are use cases where latency is important and connectivity cannot always be guaranteed, right? Could be a smart agricultural equipment in a farm out there, could be an oil and gas drilling station out in the ocean, and you want as much capability locally as possible. So in all those cases, what we are finding is distilled version of these large language models seem to have been the first thing people are looking at. But I think sky is the limit, as I said. There's so much happening with video language models. I recently attended NVIDIA GTC because we have such a strong partnership with them. And their CEO, Jensen, talked about, the world model, the cosmos, and how that can be used to train using, for example, synthetic data. I think generative AI can be used to generate synthetic data so you don't have to figure out where to get the data from, right? Because then, and frankly, that democratizes access, right? And you don't have to worry about the privacy implications because by definition, this data is synthetic. It's generated using machine learning and large language models and generative AI. So there are all these use cases that seem to be coming up very, very quickly. And we are happy to support our customers through their journey.
We can perhaps expect to see more from generative AI in the future, as we're in a very early point.
Yes, absolutely. And I think if you look at our latest product, we refreshed it and it's Genius 720 and 520. And we obviously did incremental work on CPU and GPU. But where we did step function increase was 2.5 times more powerful AI capability. That tells you how optimistic we are about the future of this technology, but also how much pull we have from our customers who are saying, give me more because I could use more and help me utilize it.
That's great. No, thank you for that overview. Why don't we move on then to talk a bit about how you're working with partners in your ecosystem and how you collaborate?
When I look at the ecosystem we have, and we've been building it and we continue building it, it has a very diverse set of partners. So we have ODMs, partners like AD-Link, Advantech, Contron, and so on and so forth. We also have OEM partners who are utilizing our products. We have independent software vendors who we are bringing in, like Canonical. Canonical, for example, was on stage with us at Embedded World, helping us launch a new product because we recognize it's not about the silicon. Silicon is just the engine. It's a starting point. You got to have a system view, you have to have a software view, and ultimately you have to have a platform view. So these are the partners where we need them, and they need us to get to market. But once you are done with the get to market, then there is a whole set of go to market activities around sales, business development, marketing. And I think that's where our partners in the channel, the distributors, they become hugely important to their success and to our success. They're happy to have us on their line cards to effectively sell this capability and offer it up to their customers. And we are happy to have them as a scaling partner because we don't have those muscles, right? They do. And so again, as going back to the win-win-win, this is the mindset with which we look at partners. The other thing we looking at more and more is technology partners. So, NVIDIA is the most public example of our deep partnership across many verticals, and I can go deeper into it. But we are also partnering, for example, with Microsoft. When Microsoft launched its latest large language model at the edge called Phi 3.5 Mini at Microsoft Ignite, it was demonstrated on the flagship smartphone silicon from MediaTek. Right. So I think these partnerships are becoming deeper and deeper. Right. Other players. You can imagine all the big hyperscalers. Who have consumer devices. They are utilizing our silicon, and we're very proud to be part of their success journey.
Sure, and as I understand, this partnership with NVIDIA was arguably big news for you guys and big news for them. So could you talk a little bit about this partnership, how it came to be, and also perhaps from the perspective of how it benefits these conversations we're having now around AI?
When I think about partnerships, Caitlin, I think about three things: people, products, and technology. Right. And so once in a while, you have these partnerships where stars just align on perfectly complementary way of looking at things, right? So if you think about NVIDIA as the highest performing, GPU platform for training, for AI in general, right? They are just, at this stage, they are just unbeatable and so far ahead of everybody else, right? If you look at MediaTek, we have a complementary presence, significant presence with 2 billion devices we ship every year at the edge. So there's perfect compatibility and barely any overlap between our focus areas. If you look at now the technology piece, they have the GPU, and the programming framework like CUDA and the libraries on top of it that are just phenomenal in terms of ease of use. And if you are an AI developer, there is no reason you would not start with NVIDIA technology as a default. And then you look at our capabilities in terms of very power efficient computing at the edge. Our NPUs are a bit more focused not on the training, but on the edge inference. Once again, you see a very complementary set of skills. And then finally, and in some ways very, very important, could be even the most important thing, is just alignment at the leadership level. Jensen Huang at NVIDIA and Rick Tsai, our CEO at MediaTek, I think have a great personal relationship. They view the world and the possibility thinking of how to upgrade the society at large using AI in the same way. And I think that partnership sort of flows down into the rest of the organizations and encourages everybody to work together collaboratively Because it's not easy. It's not easy. Two companies with different cultures to work together and still be so successful. I think it's going to be a business school, a case study a few years from now. And to make it even more real, the focus areas are automotive, ARM computing, data center, IoT, and gaming. So those are all the verticals. And to quickly summarize, in automotive, we have a MediaTek product that incorporates NVIDIA GPU. So in the car of the future, all the autonomous driving stuff happens on NVIDIA GPU, and all the displays. Your kids playing on screens in the back, the display, the the heads-up display, the infotainment, all that stuff is driven by MediaTek. Then you come to ARM computing. We had the announcement called Project Digits by NVIDIA CEO at CES, and they formally announced the brand for that, DGX Spark, which is this beautiful small device that can be an edge AI server and an edge AI development platform. It was based on a silicon called Grace Blackwell 10, co-designed by NVIDIA and MediaTek. If you look at our data center collaboration, we have service capabilities that we're collaborating with NVIDIA on to identify where are the gaps in the data center of the future and how can we contribute. On gaming, we have some very unique technology to make sure your monitors, especially as you are doing high-speed gaming, are flawlessly, showing up with the images and then whatever the gaming, industry is looking for. And then IoT, I talked about combining their training, adaptation, and optimization capability, which is their Tau SDK with 100 plus pre-trained models with MediaTek's NeuroPilot at the edge. So if you're an AI developer, let's say you want to develop a use case around spotting unattended luggage at an airport. You can pick an object recognition model that NVIDIA has already hardened over the last few years. You can then adapt it for that generic object recognition for a specific luggage detection in the context of an airport. And then our tools will help you optimize it for the MediaTek silicon. So within a few weeks, you can at least have a demo quality workload available. At Embedded World, we had 5 partners who were all telling us that they have taken what would have been a 9 to 12-month journey, building something from scratch, utilizing open source, tweaking it down to about 3 weeks. Not for a product, but for a demonstrable use case, which is great. That's what we want. That's how we get scale. That's how we unleash the creativity by taking away the busy work and allowing the AI developer ecosystem to do the creative work, which is really their forte, which is what they want to focus on. So we are very excited about the partnership.
Sure, and it sounds like there's a lot to be excited about. So thank you for providing that overview, Sameer. Before we finish, is there anything you want to mention to our listeners?
I think we are excited to be at this stage in the journey. We are committed to be in this market. We know this market takes patience, and we know the success in this market comes from building a thriving ecosystem, which is why we are investing in it. And Caitlin, I appreciate someone like you with such a strong voice in the industry helping us get the word out, because it's ultimately about helping our customers win.
And it's always great to have these chats. So thank you so much, Sameer, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
IoT Unplugged.